So I was thinking about, I've been thinking about gamepads for a while, and thinking about travel, like motion and travel, stuff like that, and how nice. So we've got some proper frost going on right now. How nice the paddles are. And I, of course, want to apply paddles to any other build that I possibly can. So, I look funny with just the mustache and the hat. Right, so paddles. The paddles reduce travel, right? And travel is important for, like, you know, saving time and motion and energy and not wearing out your carpals. But they also increase the speed for instances where speed is extremely important. And I was thinking about how it could apply to something where you're gaming. And when you're gaming, people often game with WASD, which is technically not the best way to do it. I mean, you think about the motion. And this is with your, like, starting off with your fingers on the home row. Because if you start with your fingers on the home row, you can do, putting arrows on under your fingertips. Because then every arrow is accessible. However, if you do WASD, if you do the inverted T layout, then you do have some lag time between transitioning between W and S. Because you have to, like, physically pick up your finger and move it over. But if you're hitting side strafe in the corners, it's super easy because you've got two fingers and you can bounce back and forth. So, what if you had a paddle that was tuned, and this was one of the original paddle designs, by the way, when I was trying to figure out what on earth the paddles could be. What if it were a paddle that fit between the W and the S, and just had a slight tilt motion? You know, you get like 15 degrees maybe of tilt in one direction, so 30 degrees total. Plus it would have like a little, kind of like a duckbill opening, so that your fingertip would go in as much as you're comfortable moving it. But that was kind of cool, because that would be something that you could do, you could apply in pretty much any situation. Because you're doing WASD in your gaming, and you quite literally need the milliseconds. The time it takes you to move your middle finger, may actually cost you the game. There's a lot going on this morning. I get a little antsy around Halloween. This is a time when the veil is thin. It's not cool. So the idea that you reduce the motion overall, that's obviously better in every way. There might be some tuning as far as how far down the button needs to be to activate, because you would, I mean, like, it's a question of travel, and it's the same question that was answered with the initial paddle design, where there was like no, where it was one of those mini 5mm tactile buttons. So when I used one of those, it felt terrible. There's, as much as speed is king, obviously. Like, if you can do it fast, then that's great. If you can do it even faster, then that's even better. But the tactile switches were just like, it was high pressure to engage, and then once it engaged, there was short travel and then hard stop. Like, it didn't feel at all like any of the standard keyboard keys, and that's very uncomfortable to type on. It wears out your fingers, because you're pressing your finger in, and then it's hitting a hard surface, and you're over traveling. You're trying to push through that hard surface. But if maybe that's something you could handle with practice, but like, if it has a hard break point and no travel, I can't really imagine. Like, you're mounting pressure on it until it breaks, and then once it breaks, you hit a wall. because it stops, and you have infinite increase in pressure because you're not moving it. And it was very uncomfortable, and it was weird, and it took me a while to figure out what exactly it was, but I tried it out, and I'm like, this feels terrible. I don't want these. This is bad. And I almost abandoned the whole paddle design just in general. But then I tried using the paddles to activate actual proper keyboard switches, and I was like, oh, this is comfy. This is nice. So I don't know if they would feel the same if you were using like Kale Speeds or something with a very low travel. Maybe you have like higher actuation force and lower travel. I don't know how you balance that out, but the point is, you think that lowering the travel is always going to be good, and it's just not. It's very uncomfortable. So yes, more speed, but also more speed over time, over a long enough period. You know, if you're a NASCAR driver and you want to time things for your career, essentially, and your NASCAR driver career lasts, I don't know, there's a limit. I know there's a limit, like 10 years maybe, 15 years. So you get to a point where your reaction time slows enough that it's dangerous for you to be out there. And if you get to that point, it's like, well, it's time to retire. And I guess you could probably look at the retirement estimates for other people in your field, and then figure out, is this going to be something that I can use for 15 years? Although you might not, planning like that is not necessarily a great idea. Like, if you're going to retire in 15 years, you don't want to, work construction and then retire with your body broken and bruised and battered and pain all over. Chronic pain. Ta-da! I win. I got the most money for the amount of time I was able to work. Now I will enjoy that time while I wallow in pain. The programmers have it a little bit better in that regard, as long as you don't mess with your hands. That's why that's why I just don't. I literally can't even. I literally can't, Steven. I get the potential. I guess people just don't know. This is the ergonomics thing always bothers me, because people are like, oh, that's hard. I'm learning my July Mac, and that's hard. I've got probably about 30 years of experience into QWERTY, and I'm like, okay, well, I should really switch from QWERTY. And the reason I'm switching is so I move my fingers less, I move my hands less. It has the added benefit of speed, after a while, after you pick it up. But while you're doing it, the process is very painful. It is very annoying. It is a very strange process, because you're taking all your mechanical memory and your logical memory of keyboard motion and actuation, and you're throwing it out the window and saying, okay, stop what you're doing. I know you want to do this, but don't do that, because now we're going to do this. And it's a very strange feeling. It's like your hands get ahead of your head, and sometimes your head gets ahead of your hands. So you get into that weird situation where you type something and your brain thinks that's wrong, and then your hands hit enter and it was correct. Like, wait a minute. Or you think the wrong thing and then type the right thing. Super weird. There's these connections that get made. These I don't know, some level of motor neuron where if you touch something hot, the signal doesn't even make it up to your brain. It makes it back to a central nervous system point, and then it goes, pull your hand back, and then the muscle pulls back faster than your brain could actually process. Hey, your finger's hot now. What should you do about this? Let's think about it. Let's consider previous experiences. And no, it's hot. Burn. Just pull it away. So there's some precognitive neural pathways, transportation thing. I don't know. But I swear there's some of that going on here, because I'll type things, and if I don't have to think in July Mac anymore, because I can type in it just fine, but I'll hit certain words And the words are physical motion. The words are not a series of letters that I type out. The words are like it's a slurred. I push down 3 buttons at the same time and they fall in this order and they spell the word. And that is not a logical process. That is very much a physical process. And it's more interesting to think about it in the terms of logical units, because the word anti-disestablishmentarianism is a whole lot of letters. And anytime I type anti-disestablishmentarianism, my brain is thinking anti-anti-disestablishmentarianism. I forgot it, but whatever. You're thinking about a whole bunch of letters and you're spelling it out in your head. But when I type the or when or this, I don't even think it. I've already pushed the buttons. And I've pushed them all at the same time, pretty much. So it's I don't know if it's subcognitive or supercognitive, but it's a strange process, and it's even stranger to try and change it. And the only way you really can is just to practice, just to type the same word. Now at this point, I run into words that are weird, words that I get hung up on, and then I just sit there and type that word over and over and over again. To try and reinforce those neural pathways, because the typing practice that you need in order to move those motor controls around is definitely not... the typing practice should not include typos, period. It should not include typos at all. If you are doing a typing test or a typing practice and you make a mistake, you should stop it and start it over again. You should not make mistakes, because if you make mistakes, you are applying another layer of thickness to a neural pathway that is wrong. And technically, this extends to all other things. It's much, much better, and I'm sure you have much faster uptake on the typing if you are on the learning process, if you only do things correctly. People say practice makes perfect, but if you practice incorrectly, you will not make perfect. You will make bad, but you will make bad really fast. You'll make fast bad, which I think is worse than slow bad. I'm not sure. So the idea is at the very base level, at a very physical level, you're reinforcing neural pathways, and you need to make sure that those are the correct neural pathways. I did find that the typing tests stopped being, I don't know if they stopped being helpful, but they stopped being enjoyable, at least. I believe they stopped being helpful. And I started switching to just typing. I can type fast enough that I can do my normal typing, because the typing tests the typing practice is, it's formulated, well, at least what I'm using on Keyboard is formulated to target those letters that you are weakest at. And that process I've mentioned before is somewhat disheartening, because it's like, hey, looks like you're really good at 99% of this. Let's just go over the bad stuff over and over and over and over, and you can watch yourself fail more and more and more and more. No, thank you. So switching to actual real world typing that I actually do is more useful in that regard. And you should transition to regular stuff as quickly as possible, but I probably should return to those typing tests. Similarly, when I'm doing motions with Vim keys in Emacs, I'm thinking down. I'm thinking skip word forward, and skip word forward is not W in my brain. It's do this. Well, that's E. Yeah. Okay. So I've already transitioned that. It's press this finger down, or move this finger up and then press it down. You don't even know what key it is. You just know that it's that key on the keyboard. So moving that stuff around in my brain was difficult, very difficult, and very frustrating. I still have G and D swapped around sometimes, and it's a little dangerous, because with the Vim keys, D is delete, and G is to the beginning or to the end of the file. So if you're not paying attention, you can delete to the beginning or the end of the file and be like, whoops, I typoed, and then just continue on working. Hopefully you'll be like, oh wait, where'd that bunch of code that I just wrote go? Hey, why is the file size so small? How did I already scroll to the top? You realize your mistake and then undo it, but it's a weird mistake. It's a difficult mistake to make, or a inconvenient mistake to make. Right. Yeah, I want to figure out how to get paddles on other designs to integrate, to add paddles to some other designs, because I'm pretty sure they all need paddles, all of them.